just mute your camera. All right, I'm going to do a couple quick housekeeping things as we get started. First thing I'm going to do is share my screen so you can see what I'm doing behind the scenes. I have turned on Deny Quick Access so that people had to join or had to be in the waiting room. So when I get a session started, whether it's with my class or in a setting like this, I just go into settings and quickly turn that off so that as folks are joining after I've started, they can come in automatically. So I did that first, and I'm getting ready to share an agenda with you. It takes like a second for it to load, but I did change that in my settings. So there's my host controls, and I've got quick access turned back on. That means anybody in the district can just come in now. You may have gotten to my session today from our Office of Curriculum and Instruction calendar. You may have come in here from this posted in Schoology in our Office of Curriculum and Instruction course. You may have received the update from Emily Campbell via email about your options for today, or you might have seen my post just letting you know what I'm sharing today. I'm really, really excited that I had the opportunity to come back and share some things with you that I've learned since I entered the classroom again. So you are in the session for, oh, I just closed the calendar. So just to make sure you're in the right place, you're where you intended to be. The session that you are in right now is preparing to return to face-to-face schools, curriculum tools, and how to access. So what's ironic about this session, maybe you might be thinking is, well, I've been accessing all the tools with the digital environment. We're going to take a look today accessing these tools in light of that transition back. And so I have a brief slide deck for you. Let me just do a quick check-in before I get rolling too quick. If somebody could just turn on their camera and give me a thumbs up or type in the chat that you can see and hear me. I just want to do a quick check before I start rolling. Okay, thank you, Kristen. I appreciate it. All right, thanks, Jennifer. Got the check. You can see and hear. You guys are awesome. We're going to get started, and I am going to reshare my screen then. There it goes. All right, so happy spring is sort of a little premature, but it's been feeling like spring, and I did a spring nature walk with my grandsons yesterday. I'm feeling spring, so I went with this theme. We are preparing to return to face-to-face schools today. I'm your host of this session, Rosemary Jane, and what you might not know about me, or you might know, is I started my career in education in 2007, and my little journey was that I was a primary teacher. I turned ITM admin with the technology team, learning technology team. Then we transitioned to the curriculum and instruction team. So I turned curriculum admin, and now I'm back to teaching. I'm teaching fully online digital kindergarten. But I'm also a lot of other things. I'm a mom, I'm a Mimi, AKA grandma. I'm a friend, I'm an advocate, I'm a believer, a learner, an extrovert, an ENFP, a traveler, a foodie, a drinky, a beach bum, a nerd, and just like you, I'm so many more things. So I want to share with you a little bit about my journey in education this year and what I'm doing and how I'll be shifting my practices for next year. Now, I know probably everybody in the audience today is in the blended learning model right now, and we're all just kind of waiting to find out when or if that's going to switch to a fully in-person model. But we know it's coming, and I'm hopeful that I will be back in the face-to-face next year. I will be finishing this year because I'm one of we're a smaller staff across the district, but I'm with the Cincinnati Digital Academy right now, and so I'm fully remote all year long. So I'm taking a look at what I'm doing this year in the fully remote context and how I'm going to transition that to the face-to-face. But I'm going to be looking at some of the general tools that you have at your fingertips and the practices that we want to keep. So that's what we're going to do now. Today, I was thinking about like what we're going to keep and what we're going to lose and what's been good about this and what hasn't. And I'm a primary teacher, and I 9 times out of 10 think of a cute little song. But you guys might remember the song that says, "Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold." I kind of feel that way about what we've all been through in the past year. with our shift or our pivot to, anybody else sick of the word pivot? Oh my gosh. Our pivot to online and digital learning and our transition back. So I feel like we had some really great new skills that we all picked up that we want to keep. But we also want to get back into some of those more traditional practices. And we can't wait to get back in person, but we don't want to leave behind some of the valuable tools and practices we put into place. So how are we going to streamline all of that once we're back fully in the face-to-face? So I'm going to be going over curriculum and just tools and how to access those. I've got a little checklist over here, and I made it a somewhat interactive slide. I'm going to move a checklist every time we talk about a topic. So we're going to talk about our district portal, our district LMS, our district adopted curriculum, our district approved tools, our district approved supplemental tools, and I kind of differentiate between those two, and how to tie it all together in the physical and digital space to create an ease of access. So that's our agenda for today. Before I get into a little warm-up comparison, just want to check in the chat and make sure you know it's just me here. It looks like there's 33 of you, and I'm happy to see you. I don't have a chat moderator or anything like that, so if you need something, throw a question in the chat. I'll probably hear it ding, but if you put a question in there and I just am going on and on, as I can tend to do, and I don't see it, just unmute and say, hey, I posted a question. Okay, so we'll just do it that way. All right, we're going to start off by talking about just our district portal, and you might already be using it, you may have already used it in the past, but there's some things that we can do to streamline our practices across the board, and that is to use our district portal for applications Clever. Now I'm going to briefly backtrack because I know that even at this point, a year into remote learning, remote blended, all that stuff, you've been on your computer more than you ever wanted to be. But I do want to remind you that you should always make sure as a teacher and that your students are using the Chrome web browser for most of our general curriculum items. There are some extenuating circumstances where we use Safari on a Mac or whatever. I'm talking in general across the district. We should be using the Chrome web browser. We should be signed in with sync turned on, and your students should all be too. So this really gets this is like the prerequisite of using our district portal and our adopted tools. All right, so make sure that you're signed in and sync is on. If you don't know how to do that, on my YouTube channel, I have got quick videos that show you how to do that. All right, so if you are signed in and sync is turned on, and just give me 1 second, just saw a little error. I'm going to correct. Here we go. All right, should be sharing again. Okay, your district portal shortcut, if you're signed in and syncing, should be right up here. You should see a couple things that were pushed out by the district, like Read and Write, the Clever extension, Kami. The rest of these weren't pushed out by the district. I just added them. But you should see Clever right there. If you don't have it, it should be there. You can always add it from the Chrome web store. But all I do to launch Clever is simply click on that, and it pops me right over to this login page. All right. To log in, when we click log in with Google, the most it's going to make you do is maybe select your name from a list. But if you're signed in and syncing, it takes you straight in. And that's true for your students too. And Clever is our district portal to access every application that we have in the district. So everything from our learning management system to our district adopted curriculum, many of our approved supplemental tools, and lots of other things are in here. Also, things you need to do your job to be a CPS employee. Those are also included in here. They are employee district applications. So to be an employee, to be a student, your portal is your launch point. Now, why am I starting with that and we are in this fully digital world? Because we want to think about those things that we want to keep from this time. And having our students have one point of access to get to everything they need is an important skill. It's going to streamline your practices. So you want to have your students enter their learning or enter their online time with the district through Clever. Now, For those of you who've done an amazing job using Schoology, or maybe you're using another platform like Seesaw or Google Classroom or whatever it is that you're using, that's fine and great. And you might have them go straight there. But there is really great analytic data that is collected by Clever if you just have them direct there first. Also, too, there's no mix up about possibly going to the wrong link. Some of these links are very specific to how they are rostered. I got to scroll down a bit. Instant login with rostering applications. Those are specific links in Clever. And if your students were to just Google let's see, if they were in high school, ELA, and they wanted to go to Savis, then they might go to the wrong link. If they use their district portal, then they're going to always go to the correct link. So it's just a helpful way to make sure we save time with where we're going to go and that we get the correct link. And it's just a good practice to streamline their time online. So in that, some new things that we're going to keep, or old things we're going to let go. Maybe let go of thinking of the way that we want to instruct our students to get to our things in our specific little universe of our classroom. Let's think bigger picture. Our kids next year are moving on to other teachers, and our kids, if we're not their only teacher, they might be seeing, their PE and music, or if they're in high school, their algebra and their science teachers. So let's keep big picture in mind. And that even when they leave our building and go to another one of our buildings, whether it's from elementary to high school or they move, the district portal can always be a place they go that's consistent. If their teachers do decide to use things like teacher pages, it's just going to give them a better experience. So one of my first things that I recommend you keep is the use of Clever as your launch point for yourself as a staff member and for all of your students. Let me hop back over here because I think that launching out of Clever is one of our most important things we need to make sure we're all doing. So I'm going to drop a checklist on there because it's that easy. It's just literally click Clever up here and you're in. If it's not there, add it to your Chrome, but then everything you need is in there. This isn't a Clever training, and I'm not going to get into the how-tos in the first half hour. What I'm going to do is in the second half hour, take a lot more questions and answers, unless there's a pressing question right now. All right, so that is our district portal. Let me hop back over here to our checklist. And before we go to the next item, our district LMS, I want to revisit an idea that I saw years ago. And this was published back on February of 2019. Some might call that a better time in education, before we knew of the world of pandemic and all of the craziness of online learning and all of the stress of quick pivot to this, blended learning, A/B schedule, back at home all the time. Now we're back going in person. Now it's coming. Before we had all of this, there was a simpler time. And we all had a classroom full of stuff. And Marie Kondo classroom philosophies entered the scene. So I'm going to diverge from my agenda a little because I thought this was a cute little warm up. Anybody ever heard of Marie Kondo? I can't see you, but you can thumbs up one another, or you can do it using the nod extension. Marie Kondo and Kondoing your classroom. I ran across this little article, and it was fun because it took me back to a time pre-pandemic, but also into that mindset of decluttering our classroom. And so this is just one teacher story on how they took their cluttered classroom and they made it into a place that brought them joy and organization. This is a little bit of the mindset that I want to take when I look into all of the digital tools and all the different ways that I cluttered up my instruction and my mind with a million different ways to do things. I just want to streamline it, and I want to keep those things that bring us joy. Now, you may not feel joy over Clever, but it does ease the burden if everybody knows how to do something or knows how to get to something. So joy could also come from my life is easier. And that means I quit working a little earlier if life is easier. So think of all of the digital things we're going to do today, like condoing your digital classroom. We're going to keep those things that bring us a big benefit, that bring us joy. I'm going to share a couple examples of things that do bring me joy in teaching. And we are going to release or let go some of the things we don't need anymore. And we're going to have that mindset as we go. So that link is in my slide deck. You can look at that later if you want to about your physical space, but keep it in mind for your digital space as we go through today. So the digital space after we return, keeping with that Kondo mindset of clearing it up. And if you don't know who Marie Kondo is or what in the world I'm talking about, what did you do with all your extra Netflix time last year? I don't know. It's an organization technique. So you can read about it in that article. But the digital space after we return, we want to look at what to keep, what to adapt or change, because we'll now be face-to-face, so we don't have to put everything as explicitly on the screen, and then what to abandon. Like, it just doesn't work anymore in the face-to-face. So that's what we're going to look at today. I got the slide out of order. All right. The number one thing that I hope that we keep with us as we continue, and this isn't about the Clever portal, is connected learning communities. We are probably more connected to our families than we've ever been in the digital sense. Whether or not that translated to meaningful relationships probably varies by school to school, class to class, and even within the classroom, teacher to family. But we want to look at keeping our learning communities connected, our students, our parents and families, and with one another, sharing the workload, the digital workload as we transition back face to face. So I do want to look at keeping our parents connected as one of the first goals, but I'm not going to get into that too much. That was the topic of my first session today at 8:30. If you missed that, I recorded it. I know too, now that I'm on the other side of this mountain, that we are teachers and we don't have time to just go watch every PD. But the short of it is the importance of keeping your parents connected digitally does matter, especially when we look at parents who have multiple siblings. So 2, 3 children across sometimes 2 or 3 buildings, we want to keep our families connected. Our students, we still want to provide ease of access to a lot of things digitally, and one another sharing the workload. We want to keep that going as well. All right, so let me go back up to my checklist and talk about the district portal is really just remember to go there and use it for your access. Keep in mind for parents, there is no district portal for them yet. I think it's a rumor that it might be coming, but Clever is for our students and staff members, and our LMS is for everybody. So we're going to talk about this next. Well, I guess I won't check it out if we're done with it. We're going to talk about our district LMS. All right, whoops, and I'm in the wrong section. Here we go. All right, Schoology, as you know, is our district LMS. What's an LMS? It is the learning management system. It's where we manage all of our online learning. And some of you might be thinking, I can't wait to go back to school, so I never have to use Schoology again. Let's not throw that out. Let's not have that be the baby with the bathwater. But you might be shifting the way that you use it. So I recommend that we use our learning management system to connect with our students and families, to communicate. I recommend we use it to collaborate with our district, to get a hold of our district tools, and that's the next topic we're going to get into. And so to connect, to communicate, to collaborate, and to deliver our online content. Now, we're going to get to teach face-to-face, so we're going to get to teach that reading lesson with a real book in front of real faces, and eventually, hopefully, 5 days a week instead of this AB schedule. But until then, what resources should we keep in our LMS? We'll talk about that in just a moment. But those are the 4 things that I think we should keep as we transition, is a way to connect our families and parents and students in our learning management system, a way to communicate with them, and that's just through our weekly updates, as well as it could be individual messages. Communication can also take form, though, in a static folder that we have, maybe resources for our parents, where we have them watch a video and they get their step-by-step guide, or maybe your class handbook. So that's still communicating information. We should collaborate with our colleagues and share the materials that we've created, pull in things from the district, and that really gets into our content. All right. So I'm touched on the LMS just a little bit and the need to continue using Schoology. One of those big reasons I want to hop to is our district adopted curriculum and the why with that. So you're probably all aware, because you probably joined this today because you're in there, the Office of Curriculum and Instruction course has links to everything that you need for all of that Office of Curriculum and Instruction. Even the thumbnail picture is all of the people who are part of that team, all of the professional development offerings, and then other things like our PD recordings. What you want to keep in mind is that every curriculum office, every curriculum team has their own group, and many are starting to have their own course. And so you want to make sure you stay connected to those. A really quick tip that I just talked with a teacher about this weekend, we were on a workshop on Saturday, and some of us are saying, oh, well, we missed this or that update. A lot of you may have went into Schoology in the beginning because your email got flooded, and you might have went into your settings and turned off notifications for email. But if there's a course or group, like let's say that you are a reading teacher, or maybe you're high school reading or language arts, and you want to make sure you get those updates, you can just go within that course or group and customize just that course or group's notifications. So for example, on our Saturday Blended Learning Academy workshop, we realized that there was somebody who had missed a notification. So we just went in and made sure that that was turned on. Now, why am I talking about that when I'm talking about district adopted curriculum? Okay, that's so that I don't miss information that I might want to get if I'm not in the habit of checking Schoology. So there will be updates posted here. If you want to get an email about them when they are, just go into any one of those courses and decide to turn that on. All right. Now, I'm going to assume that you all know how to get to your curriculum guides and maps, and that you know about your curriculum groups and courses. I'm just assuming you know that. So if you don't, I do need you to put that in the chat that you need me to cover it. All right. We access our curriculum guides and maps for our planning through the Office of Curriculum and Instruction site. There's pacing guides. I don't think they call them pacing guides anymore. Curriculum maps, links to the tools that we use, professional development opportunities, all of that is in there. I'm going to assume you know how to get there, but I want to look at it from the lens of how to access on the screen and what to kind of keep for your Schoology courses or in your Clever. So what I like to do is I like to use Clever as my launch point. So I want to think about my core curriculum items and how I deliver those to my students. Now, whether we're in face-to-face or digital, you can still add those to your Clever. So on my agenda, just to keep me organized, I am now on district adopted curriculum. And I'm going to go back into Clever first. We're going to look at the digital side of things and kind of what to keep. Now, one thing I would keep is organizing by favorites. If you haven't done that yet, it's something I recommend. If you look at Clever, it is organized by categories, which you can actually hide as well. A lot of people haven't noticed that little arrow right there. You can hide the categories. So let's take a look at the categories just as a list, what they are. And yes, I'm still talking about curriculum content. I'm going to talk about how to access it though. All right, in Clever, favorites, if you put a little heart on any app, that always appears at the top of your Clever. If you don't have favorites, it's just because you haven't favorited anything yet. If you ever add your own resources, that goes in next. Clever layers all the apps. Then there is a district category that was added, pandemic information. That's just going to be there. All right. Then we get into how apps are organized, and this speaks to district adopted curriculum. They're either instant login with rostering. And so these are going to be specific to what you teach. So if I taught high school ELA, then I would have a Savvis link in here. Since I teach kindergarten, I've got my Great Minds link to get to my Wit and Wisdom lessons, the InSync portion, as well as just the general online curriculum for the teachers. I teach primary, so I also have an iReady link. That's under my instant login with rostering. So you can go in there, and what you can see right there is the applications that are automatically pushed out to you and your students that log them into your class and you connected to your class. So rostering just simply means it's already connected for you. Okay, so I don't have every tool because I'm a teacher, so I have the ones that I'm rostered to. Then there are instant login applications. These are the 3 that I have access to that are instant login. You might have others. You can look at those. Instant login with saved passwords. That could be something like, I know I want to use ReadWorks, but I don't have it favorited. I could favorite it if I want to. Now it'll be at the top for me. Just click it to unfavorite it. And so this is accessing them, but they're organized by how you access them. So what I like to do, because it makes a lot of sense once you understand how it's organized, but in my opinion, it doesn't help our students get around and navigate. So I like to use, and I'm going to stop there because now there's lots of other resources that maybe either log in with Google, like Think Central, or maybe, excuse me, maybe you need to get into Performance Matters. Like there's all kinds of apps down there. But you want to think about what your students need to be able to access and what you need to be able to access. And that's where I use teacher pages. It is something Clever already does. And I like to put all of my, district created or district adopted curriculum resources in a teacher page. So they're just sitting there for my students. So like I said, I'm at CDA. So we use a program called Edgenuity. So you won't see my Wit and Wisdom Great Minds link here because that's not what they use for reading. But I would put that right there. So look at your curriculum maps and guides, figure out what your tools are, and then you can organize those in a teacher page so that they're just right there for your students. I want to make sure my students can easily get into what they need for learning. So I put those links there. I even give it a category called online learning links. And then I change up how they show their learning. We do show things in Schoology, like they do turn, and when I say show learning, I teach kindergarten, so where they turn things in, right? When we go back face to face, you might not be collecting a lot digitally. If you're high school ELA, you probably continue to, right? But if you're kindergarten and you're going to do a science lesson, you might not be collecting that on the Schoology discussion board anymore. You might just want to go ahead and collect that in live face-to-face or use your good old checklist. Okay, do that, but maybe just have a link to what the resource is so that students and families, when they're not with you, can still access their learning in one place. So again, that is our district adopted curriculum. These are just the apps. You need to refer to your maps and guides for the specific tools that you use. But I will say that I do want to share, I didn't open the tab for that, the district created lessons on Schoology. I know a lot of people are thinking like we won't use those when we go back face to face. I will, but I'll just use them differently. I'll sort of use them just to share what we're learning more. Or if I have a student, we have to keep this in mind as we go back face to face. Let's say that we have a student or even a whole classroom that ends up quarantined early in the year next year, or maybe at the end of this year. We still want to have some sort of anchor for a real face-to-face instruction. And remember that our learning management system, Schoology, is where we can put that so that our students can still keep learning. So I'm going to click this here and just remind you that there are a lot of already made units or templates for online learning or for digital learning that you can still use in the face-to-face. Like I teach my ELA Wit and Wisdom lessons in a live Google meeting now in the virtual. Next year, I'll teach them in the face-to-face and it won't be on the screen, but I can still pull those in and have that be a what we're learning now. In lower primary, your audience then would be mostly parents. In upper elementary or upper grades, you might still have your students turning things in digitally once or twice a week. And that's a good practice to hold on to. But that district curriculum, we kind of went over almost like 3 different things. I referred to the maps and guides in our Office of Curriculum and Instruction teams. That's where you go for what we're learning and what tools we use. Clever is where we can access all those digital tools, and that doesn't have to be for students. That can even just be your teacher guides. We can create our teacher pages so our students can get right in. And then the last thing that I just went to was our district created lessons that are already done. I would like to share some of the ones that I have done, but I want to hop back over to this agenda and make sure I'm staying kind of on point. All right, that's our district adopted curriculum. I'm going to lump these two together, district approved tools and supplemental tools. So like your reading lessons can be supplemented. I'm going to go back to Clever again. Just keeping in mind that Clever is where I access everything, and then Schoology is where I tie it all together. In Clever, not my favorite, sorry. I've got my instant login with rostering. This, if I'm talking about my reading that I teach, well, I work at CDA, so I use a program called Ingenuity to teach reading. So I supplement actually with the Wit and Wisdom lessons. Next year, if I'm teaching in a face-to-face building, I'm going to be teaching Wit and Wisdom. Maybe I'm going to supplement with ReadWorks or Epic. So you get the idea. These are the supplemental instructional tools. Then there are a whole bunch of other resources. These are just other application links, but it's not an all-inclusive list. I just want to make sure that you are aware that we have a district-approved, it's called the district-approved software list, but really what it's about is our approved, sorry, they changed it, approved technology list. These are your applications that you are allowed to use on our network, or if they use student data. So I'm going to drop this link for you just to make sure that you have access to this. Not everything you can use as a supplemental tool is in Clever, but most of it is. If you end up using something off this approved list and you use it and it's a great tool and you think it should be in Clever, you can actually request that links be added to Clever. But I just wanted to make sure that you know and understand that there are district approved tools and there are district approved supplemental tools. It really could have been one topic, but I just wanted to share that. So these are already in Clever, and then there's even more supplemental tools you can use that are not necessarily all in Clever yet. I believe they're working on getting them all in Clever. So I'm going to move my check marks over here for approved tools that already appear on Clever, and then additional supplemental tools you can find on the list. Now, if you have another great tool, this is just heads up, if you have another great tool and it's not approved, there's something you can fill out called an application for technology initiative. If anybody has questions on that, I'll answer them in Q&A. So now we're looking at tying it all together, the physical and the digital, and keeping an ease of access for our students and families when we are back in the face-to-face. Let's hop over here. Some of the things that I am not going to let go of because they became gold is my supplemental instruction or activities that I keep in Seesaw. I'm a kindergarten teacher, so lower primary. I love that tool. I'm going to keep it. My students are going to keep using it, whether I'm in the fully face-to-face. And in Q&A time, if you want to know how I'm going to use it, I can share that. But I'm going to do stations around my room with QR codes. My kiddos will have their iPads, and so they'll be able to do station work that they fully do with their hands and cutting and gluing and doing all the great face-to-face real life things. But then they can keep that digital learning journal by taking a picture of it or maybe doing a video of themselves learning. So I'm going to keep Seesaw, but I'm going to keep it anchored in my Schoology so that my students and parents get all of their learning materials in one place. I am absolutely going to keep Flipgrid. This is a great program for empowering your students' voice, giving them a place where they can share. They record themselves, and then their peers can answer. There's so many great teacher settings. It's all free. It's an awesome resource. I'm definitely going to keep that when I go back to the face-to-face. And I think that homework is going to become a lot more of a show and tell opportunity of what's going on at home. So think about some of those beautiful moments that you've had in digital meetings where you have gotten to see your students share a way that they did something that was totally different than they would have done in the classroom. And you can use tools like Flipgrid to give them a space to record that still. And they can still record in the classroom. Another thing I'm going to keep when I'm back in the face-to-face, and I just grabbed a picture offline, I'm going to keep class meetings, and I'm going to keep a physical classroom space. But things like this wall with my visual schedule, and I don't have a physical classroom right now, so everything I do is on the screen. It's actually all in Google Slides, and so like my days of the week are on a slide, my months of the year. And for those of you who don't teach primary, just indulge me for a moment. But think about your physical space once you get back to the classroom. And think about how you could use Schoology to share a picture of that physical space. And then maybe if they click on it, parents could get a virtual tour from students. It could open up to a Flipgrid of a child explaining, this is how we use this part of the wall. It could open up to maybe if there's a story on the shelf, which again, in my digital classroom, I have bookshelves with books we're reading right now, and even recordings of those readings are linked to them. Well, maybe in my physical classroom, whatever books we are featuring that week might be sitting on the shelf, and I could take a picture of my real face-to-face classroom, and I could add a recording of my students reading that book or explaining how we use this space. Also, think about safety. Safety is going to be a huge piece when we're tying it all together, and I'm on that last topic on my checklist here. When we're tying it all together and we're back in the fully physical and we're using digital, we can enhance the experience of maybe talking about, we probably won't gather like this in this close of a meeting, but maybe we can have some videos that we link to our Schoology course that show our procedures. So what can we take from our physical classroom and add a digital enhancement to our Schoology, to our LMS, to help establish that environment when we're back in the face-to-face. All right, I had some other things, but I'm a little over what I had planned to share, so I want to stop and be mindful of questions that you might have. I'm going to stop presenting for a moment. I don't see anything in the chat. So if you have a question now, you can either throw it in the chat or you can ask it out loud. I did have some other slides or some other tabs queued up to share, but we are more than 2/3 over with our time right now. So questions? If not, for those of you who don't know, I had a really ugly run-in with COVID. I was very sick for 3 weeks, and then I had some neurological complications that aren't real common but do happen. And so I'm about to give myself a 5-minute screen break, and I'm going to encourage you to do the same. So I think it's a really important thing. They recommend 10 minutes for every hour. I think it's safer to do 5 minutes every half hour, and it's what I do with my students now in the virtual. I set a timer, and if we've hit 30 minutes, then I've got something reminding me that it is time for me to either end this lesson or say we're all pausing and getting away. And I'm going to do that in my professional practices as well. So you could take a moment to just step away, digest what we've shared, and maybe come up with your memory loss. Short term has been a bigger issue for me. So I lose my train of thought in the middle, and I was already like that anyway, but I just find it's worse now. But what we're going to do is take that 5-minute break, step away, let the stuff marinate for 5 minutes, not looking at a screen, and then come back and either throw your questions in the chat, or we can just unmute and share. I did have a little bit more I could share as far as what I'm doing now that I will be keeping back in the face-to-face, but how I'm going to adjust or adapt it. And what I'd love to do when I come back is talk about what are you going to get rid of that you're never going to do again because you hate doing it in the virtual. Because like now, finally, this year, I'm another teacher just like you, and there's some stuff I'm going to never ever do again. So we can share that as well and have a discussion. So take 5. I'm going to mute my microphone and camera. I'm going to walk away, and I will be back in 5 minutes.